Welcome to the Women in Money Business podcast. I'm Dr. Priti Basra, and today I've got with me Katrena Friel. Katrena, I'm so excited to speak to you today because I've looked at so much stuff about you and I've read so much up about you, and I'm just really excited to share your journey with our listeners. So would you mind sort of giving me a little bit of background as to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. I have a company called Becoming the Expert, and I've been working with women predominantly over the last 25 years to create their personal brand business. I do that now in 90 days. I build all the assets for them. So that includes a book, a website, a brand, their signature program, the whole shebang, so that they can just get started and get on with it. And then we spend the rest of the 12-month program really getting out there and just doing it and hand holding them through that process of development and getting confident around who they are and what they stand for. So it's been quite a ride over the last 25 years.
Yeah.
Technology's come a long way and we've evolved and pivoted at every turn, and it's been so fantastic. So I like to consider that I'm, on top of the latest thing to make our lives easier as entrepreneurs, because as we know, it's the best personal and professional development program you'll ever do is start a business.
Absolutely.
And that's
So
a
what?
nice.
Yeah, very eloquently put there, Katrena, very eloquently put. What sort of got you started on that journey? So did you always know that you wanted to go into sort of business mentoring, or did things happen along sort of life that sort of led you on to that beautiful entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, it's sort of like with a lot of people, there's sort of usually some sort of negative trigger that gets us
Yeah,
humans
yeah.
moving. And in my case, I was no different. So I was working in my last corporate job. I loved the industry. I loved my role. And I never wanted to have children. And I'd been happily married for many, many years and still am 38 years later. But I fell pregnant and it was a really odd moment. We decided to embrace it, even though we didn't really think it was our thing. But I ended up losing the baby and having a miscarriage, and that really made me quite weak at this particular time, because I don't know, a lot of women lose babies and we'd never known grief like it at that point, and really shook me at my core. And during that period, I must have been not myself, and I saw this ad in the paper, and the ad, it was the very early days of coloured ads. And I remember looking at the coloured ad thinking, wow. But when I read the red ad felt to me like it had my name on it, like it was saying for me to call. So anyway, I caught up with this guy and my gut response was instant. My gut was no, 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 straight away.
Okay.
And after spending time with this guy was really wretched. Like, it was really terrible. And he manipulated my brain. I could actually see how he did manipulate me at the time. But regardless, I had seen the ad. I wanted what was in the ad. I signed up, handed over $30,000 to this guy.
Wow.
And very soon after that, I realized he had absolutely nothing. And I went to
Can I just ask, Katrena, sorry, what was the ad? What was in the ad?
It was for to be a coach, to be a coach with him under his banner. But he had no banner. He had no programs, no nothing. And there was a few of us that had been conned at the time, and we all started obviously talking eventually, and the blinkers came off and we all started to realize what had happened. Anyway, I went to my solicitors and said, oh, here's the lump of paper that I've gathered. Here's all of my evidence of everything. And he said, yeah, good. You probably will win. He said, but, it's a complex case because judges don't go through this much bit of paper. And he said, you probably will win, but let me ask you a question. He said, do you think you've learned a $30,000 lesson? And it was the most profound, amazing question. My whole body responded. And I felt like in that moment, it was like in that movie where it goes click, 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 and click, 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 click. It was like that happened to my whole body. And I was like, I actually think I have. And the lesson that I had learnt was that I had more inside of my big toe than this guy had over 30, 40 years of conning people. And I just decided not to obviously go to court and go through all that. And even if I won, there'd be blood out of the stone. You'd never see us, and he'd just go underground again anyway, which is what ended up happening to everyone. So it was great. And then after the trauma of it all, and I started to go out on my own, the rest was history. I started in my own business and started coaching and mentoring and training and doing it all. And everywhere I went, every time I trained and coached somebody, there'd be always one person that says, I'd love to do what you do. And I would think, well, how did I do it? And then I started to unpack and go backwards and re-engineer and reverse engineer everything. And then just started off like that 25 years ago. And then to this day, I see my evolution as being what was soup, a nice, meaty soup, ended up being a very strong and refined sauce now.
Yes.
And so that's what happens with iteration. And I'm very proud of what I've got now. Yeah.
Absolutely, and you should be. So I just want to go back a couple of steps then, just because, as you know, this is a podcast for women. And if you don't mind me asking, you mentioned that you knew you didn't want children. And I think that's it's not often that if I'm honest, I've met women that say that, but I do know women that have said that, and they have their reasons. And what was your reason, if you don't mind me asking?
Gosh, I've really tried to unpack this therapeutically over the many decades, just out of curiosity. Like, why was I built like this? Why is my attitude like this? On the surface, I think what kind of started it was my mum had 4 girls, all born in January. All she wanted to be was a mother. And I remember my mother every single day in the laundry with piles of laundry that never seemed to go anywhere, always more and more and more. And she was very organized, so she must have been churning through it, but it just was a never-ending cycle. And it just seemed like drudgery to me. It just seems the most horrendous experience to be a mother, because that was what I saw. I just saw laundry, endless laundry. And so I think that went in. I think that clicked me. And then I sort of looked around and realized I didn't have that gene. There's a gene where the woman feels like there's tick-tock going on. She looks at other children. She gets clucky. She wants kids. I always loved kids. I could play with kids like a kid. I was sort of like the fun auntie. I always loved giving them back. It also seemed really exhausting. And I thought, oh my God, I couldn't do this every day. How do they do it? It's the hardest job in the world. And I decided I wasn't up for it. I wasn't good enough to do that.
I think at least you've had the clarity and you're sort of to know that it almost like future planning, isn't it? I think it might sound great in the short term when I've got this little baby, but then they're going to grow and the needs they're going to become more demanding. And it is like you say, it is such a big job. It's having another job as well as your job. But you can't sort of switch, like lock the door and walk out because they're in your house. They're everywhere.
Bad investment to me. Like, there's no return on investment. And I preface this by saying, remember, I'm coming from a place of not knowing.
Exactly.
Remember, they're not there beside me, and I'm missing them. Once you have them, and once I had them, I would feel the same way, that I love them unconditionally, want to be with them all the time, and would do absolutely everything for them.
Yeah.
I'm sure I would have been naturally like that. But I just chose not to have them, so I'm not missing. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Does that make sense? Because
it does, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's nice that you're happy and open to talk about it, because I think sometimes there is quite a bit of stigma attached, saying, she doesn't want children. Like, well, why is that? Is she not maternal? And I don't think it, like you say, when you look back to people's experiences, and like I know a few women that are very similar to yourself and said, like, I don't want children. There's something that I've never wanted. And I don't see that as being selfish. I see that as being very clear, and you're quite privileged to know at X age that, you know what, that's not going to fit into my lifestyle. That being said, obviously, when you did fall pregnant, it wasn't like, obviously it was probably a bit of a shock, but you're not thinking, I'm absolutely not doing this. Like, because there could be people that'll go and say, well, I'm not going through with this. It needs to end. But then, so my next question would be, do you think you had been as successful in your career had this pregnancy had been okay and you did have a baby?
Yeah, what I've noticed when I look around at other women is they become very efficient, very effective, got limited time. They haven't got time to muck around. They cut through the bullshit. And I just would have been a bit like that, I reckon.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think what my number one value is, and this is what I do with my clients, is I want them to understand their values. And if they understand their values, they'll understand their blueprint for happiness. And my number one value is freedom. And so if that's my driving force, every decision is made based on that value, or some derivative of that value, then you can see why I've made the decisions I've made. I want
Cool.
freedom. Like this is what my life here is to experience, is freedom. And
Yeah.
I've gone back to past lives and I've had a look, and I could have in my past life had, 4 or 5 children last time. One of my past lives was me running like an orphanage and picking children up off the street and caring for them. And then, I remember how many children had been through my home and how loving I was, and how I was up on a hill and I could see the cottage and I could see where we were living and how the children were saved and safe. And I did all that. And I think I've come into this life going, okay, have a rest, focus on some easier stuff, and freedom, enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's almost like, now this is for you. This is your era of you sort of celebrating you and doing what you want to do. How did, so obviously I know that you're sort of a business coach mentor. How did you sort of go into how did becoming the expert program sort of come into fruition? So what steps, what things happened along the line that you thought, you know what, this is what is needed?
So first of all, I just did what I had done. So I knew you needed a website and you needed a brand, and then you did the website, and I sort of worked out that there was a sort of order to building a business. And I started to sort of track that, work that out, have a few experiments. And then as technology picked up, more and more got put into the basket of what was required. And now, oh my God, now there is just so much that's required just to open. And what I found was most women, when I left them to their own devices through a group training, they didn't build anything because they technically couldn't do it. It was overwhelming. There was so much to do, so much to know, so many softwares to deal with. And so then I said, oh, well, this is not right. We need to get this sorted out. All right, well, I'll do it. And so I started a done for you model back before done for you was even a thing. In fact, when they were zigging, I was zagging, because in my day, it was all about, oh my God, online programs. Just do an online program, make money while you're asleep.
Yeah.
And just online programs are the absolute go. Oh my God. And then I saw those stats, and 75% of people that sign up for an online program never open it. And of those that go in and open it, 95% of them never complete. So even though I do create an online program for my clients, usually in the second year, we do that as an add-on. We don't do it as the main product, because what I believe people should be focusing on is a transformation end-to-end solution. And what people want now more than ever, now that the online, the do-it-yourself, cheap and cheerful stuff is all past now. People realise there's no silver bullet and there's no quick way and there's no cheap way of doing it. I think everyone's come back to done for you now and realises the value of paying someone to help them get this show on the road. And so within 90 days, I've built it all for them, and then they're on the road and then they're doing it, and I'm hand-holding them through that process. But it really upset me that everyone was spending money hand over fist on these half programs. Like, they'll go and do a Facebook course, then they do a LinkedIn course, then they do an SEO course, then they do a website course, then they do a training course, and then a coaching course, and then a speaking course, and then the list just goes on. And I worked it out that it was $75,000 invested and 5 years and still no business.
Yeah. And I can 100% resonate with that. So I've done various courses just for self-development more than anything. But I have done courses where I've sort of learned the skill that I was intending to learn. And the most successful courses were the ones that had sort of that. I wasn't just an online course and then go and do it at your own time. It had that interaction. It had involvement with the coach or the mentor and somebody to sort of guide you through that process. And I think initially when people start to look at sort of coaching and mentoring programs, the immediate thought is, well, I can probably just do this on Google. You know, I can probably find something on Google, or I can watch a YouTube video and I can do it. And I think, like you've just mentioned, they don't fully initially understand the value that somebody like you would add, because you've already done it. You are proven to do. You get somebody from A to B, and you've got to pay for that, you know. And I think people do try and do stuff on the cheap, but then, like you say, especially if they've got a free course, if they're signed up to a free course, like you said, 95% of the time they are not even going to open that email, because it's just like, yeah, I'll just sign up for it, and it goes into your inbox. There's no incentive, there's no drive to sort of go, you know what, I've paid for that, so I need to do that. And I know various sort of colleagues that do have what the high ticket coaching or mentoring programs, and I've heard people say, like, you know, why they're charging 20,000-30,000 pounds for that, blah 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 blah. They're taking advantage of people. And my personal view is they're absolutely not taking advantage of you, because if you pay £10 for it, would you put the same level of effort and detail into it? And I also would strongly agree with you in terms of people moving away from done with you to done for you, because time, and we are such a time poor society at the moment, because we've got so many things going on. And especially if you're a mum, and obviously you're working with females as well, especially if you're a mum, you are like, we are the art. We've got the multitasking down to a fine art. But at the end of the day, we're still human. There's only so many hours in a day that we can dedicate to doing X, Y, Z. So I think when people are sort of pricing up models like done for you and looking at those prices, they also have to take into account that, you know what, that's been done for me. You know, I'm still able to do what I'm doing, and yet this is happening in the background to sort of almost catapult me sort of maybe 5, 10, 15 years ahead compared to if I was to do it myself. And we don't have, like you've just mentioned, you've done this. You live it, breathe it, know it. And it's somebody that's brand new to it. It's a minefield, like all those different courses that you just mentioned, like the SEO, the Google, the speaking, you know, whatever, the funnels and things like that. How can an average person believe that they can put that all together in a succinct offer and be able to sell it? And I think sometimes people don't often openly talk about the price of something. So, you know, in terms of, like, if there's a coaching program and it's £20,000-30,000, people don't often say that I've bought the course, I paid £30,000 for that, and I got this out of it. And I think that's a shame, because that makes somebody else that's looking to sign up for that kind of course thinking, oh, somebody, you know, am I doing the right thing? And I think it should be discussed more openly, because I think we'll be surprised and shocked to know how many of those really successful people have actually paid a good amount of money to sort of learn those skills quicker, or had their hand held to get them to a certain point to get to that success. I don't think they should be embarrassed about that. And I think sometimes they want to show that I was so successful of my own doing, but then that's not transparency for me. If I ever got to that point where somebody would help me along my way, I would be shouting from the rooftop saying, you know what, you need to go with this person here, because they've helped me get from X to A to B, you know, so share it. And I think there is a little bit of that in business, where people don't want to share how they got the success. They just want to share the success, and which is unfortunate, really. So the next thing I wanted to ask was, I know that you speak about 7 streams of income, and I also sort of, from what I understand from your model, is that you're able to sort of take somebody's expertise and bring out those 7 sort of different ways of monetizing it effectively. Can this work for anybody, Katrena? Can you be, I don't know, like a stay-at-home mom and sort of go down this path, or does it have to be more sort of a executive presence that you would work with? Like, just thinking of people listening, they might be on different ends of the spectrum. How does that work for those kinds of people?
They have meetings all the time where I can see it's a little bit early. They haven't got any work experience. They haven't got any particular expertise or specialty. I'm looking for people that sort of come locked and loaded, and then they don't know what they're sitting on. They don't realise that that's a whole personal brand business, and there's a book in that. There's a TED Talk in that. There's a signature program in that. There's a whole ecosystem that we can build around. So, no, I don't think it can work for everybody. I do think that it needs to be somebody that has got something to say. They just need to be positioned correctly, packaged correctly, and priced correctly. And that's what I do in the program is I pull all that together. Positioning is like having the book. The book means you've done the rigor. So I get people to do the book first in that order, because that way they go down deep. We uncover all the golden nuggets, and we make sure that you've done the rigor, meaning you know who you are, what you stand for, what you don't stand for, what your values are. And then your whole philosophy book is based on that messaging. And so then it launches the brand. So then we get the brand from the book, because the book has context, it has story, it has messages in there, and then that languaging speaks to the brand. Whereas we don't do the brand first and then make up a book. We do the book and let the book lead our messaging. How do we speak? Who are we talking to? Who's our reader? So then we take it from there. Yeah,
that makes sense. That makes sense, because I suppose like the books potentially could be a story of, you know, whatever your personal story is, and because it makes life easier, doesn't it, once you've done that, because you can just take out little chapters or threads from that and just build upon that. So my next question would be that obviously you're saying that there's people that you want to work with need to have something going on already, which I understand. What if the person doesn't know that they're sitting on something? Like, how?
I don't want them to make that judgment. Let me make that judgment.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
most people that I speak to, in 15 minutes, I give them clarity around who they are and what their medicine is in the world. What are they going to place on the altar of humanity? What is their legacy going to be? So I mean, if you leave it up to women, they'll talk themselves out of everything. They'll have self-doubt, they'll have lack of confidence and a lack of assertiveness. So they are not in a position to be making that decision right now. They need to come and have a chat with me for 15 minutes and let me blow their mind as to what they're sitting on.
Yeah.
That's my gift. That's my genius. So let me do my thing.
Absolutely. And I think, and like now you touched on self-doubt, and I was listening to your TEDx talk about self-doubt, and there were some absolute pearls in that, and there was a couple of things that I'd posted about I think last month to do with imposter syndrome, and it was really interesting to listen to your talk, because I'd posted about, I think a few weeks back, about imposter syndrome, and if you're feeling like that, you're absolutely in the right place if you feel like that. Whereas I think we try and run away from imposter syndrome, but then my personal view is, it's, if you're feeling like that, that's probably your time to grow. Like you're in the right place, because it's you trying to go to the next level. So in terms of sort of self-doubt, and unfortunately or fortunately, it is, like you say, probably more prevalent in females, and we do talk ourselves out of things. Because I've obviously, without even realizing, I've said to you, what if they think they can't do it?
Yeah.
And then you've said, like, that's what they're probably going to do. So I just wanted to sort of unpick that really a little bit, in terms of, and like, obviously I've listened to your TEDx talk, but I appreciate that people listening to this may not have listened to it yet. Please do. How are there any sort of things that you can speak about in terms of the self-doubt and that imposter that could help people listening?
Yeah, so I'm coming from Australia, you're in the UK. Let's take those two cultures as an example. We're told to, you know, be small, don't raise your head above the crowd, be modest. And so our breeding in our culture and in our families and in our growing up, we have been told to not get above our station, as it were. And so when you come out and you suddenly have a lot to say about something, you're going to be fighting against thousands of years of female oppression. And I'm not even kidding.
Yep.
Shut up. and just stay at home barefoot and pregnant is the old adage they used to say. But now women want more. They can do more. They've got more freedoms, and isn't that great? But we're actually so locked up in our own minds. You have to stop blaming culture, society, upbringing now. Now it's actually our own faults. Now it's our actual own faults because now we know better. We know that we need to get therapy. We know we need to work on our traumas. We know we need to work on our limiting beliefs. This has all been out there for 20 years, 30 years now. So there's no excuse now for not speaking up, speaking out, finding your voice, learning how to be assertive, finding your leadership skills and getting going on something. There's just no excuse anymore. We are our own worst enemy and other women are their own worst enemy.
And I think I'm so glad you've said it so bluntly that because sometimes there's things that those are sort of thoughts that I have in my head, and maybe I'm not as brave as you to just say it as you've just said it, and I think it's really good that you have, because it's so readily, information is in the palm of our hand. We've got our phones in our hands probably 20 hours of the day, and if we, like you say, if we want to grow, if we want to have those leadership skills, understand our limiting beliefs, empower our mindset, go into a growth mindset, only you can do that, and no one's coming to save you. You've got to save yourself effectively. And often, I don't know about yourself, but then often people will say to me, and I'm obviously not as successful as you are in the slightest, but then in sort of, it's all relative. So people will say to me, I don't know how you do it. You've got 3 children, you've got 2 businesses. How do you do it? And I'm just thinking, well, I just do because I want to do it. And if I don't do it for me, no one else is going to do it for me, and sometimes I do feel that people maybe think that I don't maybe care about my children as much, or I'm very focused on my career and everything else gets left behind. But then that's not how it is. That's how it looks from the outside world, because they're thinking you can't have it all. I'm not saying I have got it all, but it's finding that balance between this hour, these hours, I'm mum, and between these hours, I'm the business owner, and between these hours, I'm the friend, and these hours, I'm just me. And I think, I don't want to stereotype for all women, but then I think some women do struggle being more than one person. And I think that's when you lose yourself, basically, because you're so sort of narrow-minded, short-sighted, that you just think that like you mentioned before, they probably talk themselves out of it, thinking, well, I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do what she's doing. But then you're only limited by your brain, and your mind, because I'm not extraordinary. You're not extraordinary, and in the nicest way possible, Katrena. That we're nothing special. We've just chosen to do things that push us, but then not be the victim by it as well. Because I think some people, the females, so I'm talking about female, this is female podcast, can sort of say, well, I do that, and no, woe is me, feel sorry for me because I have to work and I have to have a family and I have to do this. But why don't you reframe it? Why don't you think, do you know what? I'm so blessed to be able to, I've added multiple streams of income to my life, and I've educated myself, I've developed myself. You don't often hear females talking like that, or if they do talk like that, they're the ones that are successful, and then the others are sort of the polar opposite. So I think it's sort of trying to just, I suppose in this podcast, we've already, I think, done it already, is dispel that belief or that myth that you have to be a certain kind of person to be successful. Yes, you do to a certain extent, but anybody can be that person if you've got the right mindset to be that person. And I think if you're in a very much like a pity mindset, like, come and help me, you're not going to be successful. But then you can't then also envy somebody else's lifestyle. They can't sit and look at you and say, Katrena, do you know what? You're a published author, you're a TEDx speaker, you run these courses. Look at you, you're just lucky. Like some people I think, you're just lucky, but then they won't maybe see the hard work, determination, and that journey that you've been on. So I think I just wanted to sort of openly put out there, like you've just said greatly, that, your only limiting factor is you, basically.
Yeah, it's introverts work, extroverts work. Introverts have certain problems and challenges, and extroverts are going to have certain problems and challenges. I like to see what I get and then work within those challenges. I know exactly what's going to happen to the introvert. I know exactly what's going to be challenging to the extrovert. But what we've got to become in business is a multivert. So we've got to access both energies. The book writing is very introverted process. So you need to knuckle down, head down, bum up, get it done. And then when you speak, you use your extrovert to send your message out in the world. The problem becomes, and where authors and coaches starve, is that introverts just stay at home and don't take the baby out, and their message is never heard. And congratulations, they're the world's best kept secret. And extroverts often don't cross their T's, dot their I's, do the rigor. And so they're just shouting from the rooftops about God knows whatever else, thinking whatever they say is brilliant. So we've got to bring those skills together and get some rigor around it.
Brilliant. I love that. I can sort of see those two people as well as you're describing them. And I'm just thinking, I'm probably a little bit of both of those in different scenarios. But then I suppose it's finding that balance, isn't it? Like you say, being that multiverse.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
absolutely.
you've got a bit of both, and you've got a bit of both naturally, it's easier for you. Yeah.
Yeah, but I suppose, can you develop that? So, can you, if somebody thinks they are just very much an introvert, can you tease out that actually you might be an extrovert? You might have sort of strands of that in you. Is that something that you would work on as well?
Once they've done the rigor of their book and they start to see their brand and everything come together, you can't shut them up. They now want to launch that baby. Whereas when you've got nothing to launch, of course you're scared. You haven't done the work. You haven't uncovered anything. What would you speak about if I asked you to speak? So once you've done the rigor, it's very hard to shut people up. And introverts come out of their shell, and in their lovely, gentle, modest, caring, nurturing way, they go out and become very, very good authors, speakers, and trainers and coaches. Whereas coaching is their natural state. That's easy for them. Yeah. And extroverts, we have to get them to knuckle down and focus.
Yeah, calm themselves down. And I know that you've published books there. What is because I know you've got a best-selling book. What is that book called, and what do you cover in that?
So that was completely, I couldn't hear a word of that question. I didn't have any volume. It just didn't come out at all.
That's okay. Don't worry. I'll do it. Yeah,
I've got
okay.
you back
I'll do
now.
it again.
So if you give me the question
I know that you've got a. Yeah, no problem. So I know that you've got published books there. What is your best-selling book, and what does it cover?
So probably the one there's a book series called Refresh Your Thinking, and I've done a lot around the Refresh Your Career one. That gets me in the corporate doors. I can do a really good training session on that book. Everyone can have a copy of that. And then from there, I've been able to create a sort of $1 million business just out of that one book. And that's what we're aiming to do with everybody's book and everyone's business, is there's $1 million within each book. And I believe everyone has a 12-book series in them. And so I would say that's the one I've leveraged the most, and that's the one I've probably made the most money out of. But I'm not in the business of selling books. I'm in the business of selling signature programs. That's where the money is, not in books.
Yeah. And not in books, yeah. So then, talking about sort of that £1 million figure there, and we touched upon earlier that you talk about 7 streams of income.
The book is a positioning tool. So from the book, you create the talk, and so that becomes your sales and marketing strategy. If you don't talk, you won't really get any leads. You're just relying on social media randomly stumbling across you on a scroll.
Right.
So the book positions you as the expert, then the speaking makes you a star. And then you combine those two, and it's very powerful positioning. From there, we sell into a signature program. So you become a trainer. And from there, you can become a coach, mentor, facilitator, and consultant. So there's those 7 income streams that you can build out of one book, one talk, one signature program.
And what does the facilitator and consultant role look like?
So what a lot of people don't know is they use training and facilitating, whichever one they prefer. But actually training is very different from facilitating. To me, training is where you've bought a certain thing, you saw it on paper and said, I want that. We come with an agenda. We're going to cover that agenda. We're going to stay on topic and we're going to get that stuff done. So that's training. Whereas facilitating is sort of like your second year clients who know your base program, know your base training. Now they need to more mastery. This is where you take the wisdom from the room, and a facilitator draws out the wisdom in the room. They are not the trainer.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah,
Whereas the
that
trainer, the students don't know what they don't know. They need to be trained in that thing. Whereas facilitating, they know stuff. They've got an opinion. They're at mastery. Now let's hear the whole group and bring all that wisdom into play. Now, coaching and mentoring, again, people don't know that there's a difference. Coaching is where you ask questions until the client gets to their own realizations. Now, you could do that all day, every day, but if they don't know what they don't know, you could be at that for a long time. Whereas I see mentoring as quicker, because they're saying, Katrena, you've done it for 25 years. What are you doing? So I just install. I'm very much a mentor. So they're paying for my opinion. They're paying for my model. They're paying for my strategies. So we install all that. We get on with it. And then once it's all done and it's in them, then we can start to go, so how does that feel for you? And coach them round to that next level. But you don't want to start with coaching because you'll get nowhere. You'll be in coaching for 2 years and still won't have.
And I think that's quite key, because I am aware of the differences between coaching and mentoring, but I don't think most people are. And I think sometimes people think that it's the same thing. They think coaching and mentoring is the same thing. And some people think, well, I need to look for a business coach, but not actually realize that if you have, like you say, you haven't got the answers or within you, you can be coached for, you're paying thousands, on coaching. You're not going to get to where you need to be. And sometimes people, I think, maybe have a stigma attached by being called a mentee or a mentor. If they've been in business for 20 years, think, I don't need to be mentored. I know it. But I think putting that ego aside and realizing what the mentoring actually involves, that like you say, tapping into your 25 years of experience and your knowledge. I don't think there's any sort of embarrassment in saying that, I am Katrena's mentee, because you're going to get where you want to be so much quicker. And then what about the consultant role? What does that look like?
So consulting is where the industry takes notice of what you're doing and wants the industry to rise up. And also organizations want to rise up, and sort of they look at your model that you've developed as a signature program and say, do you know what? Let's just bolt that on and put that in our business. And so within that consulting field, there's actually a number of different levels of income. One is a train the trainer program, because you're now getting so much business, you can't do it yourself. You need to carve it up around the country, around the world, and do a global franchising train the trainer model. Then there's organizational training, where they want to hire you in to get your model and they want that rolled out across the business. That's very much consulting, because you would do a bit of a customization piece there. And that's where consulting comes in. And then the third one is where the industry comes in and says, do you know what? We need to go to the next level. Oh my God, this is done for us. Let's just get these guys in. And that becomes a super standard. Yeah. So there's lots of money in consulting, but it's at a very high level. It's usually further down the track.
But then that would be something that somebody could work with you in your done for you one. Would you be able to sort of guide them down that route to go into consulting if they were to sort of sign up with you? Would you be able to guide them down that route in your program if they wanted to go into consulting?
Yes. It's I don't think they should start with that, because I think they're leaving money on the table. I think you need to build a product, prove the model, get super fans, get some runs on the board, and then the consulting is sitting there waiting for you whenever you're ready. And I even say to them, let the market move you. You'll get a champion. They'll just appear out of your program. So the ones doing the course will suddenly say, oh, this is my life's calling. I want to do this. Can you train me? And then you've got your first. So it can start like that. Just let it happen organically. You don't really have to go after it. Just do great work, get great results, and the world comes to you.
That's really nice. Like, that's a really nice way of putting it. What's next for you? What's next for you in your sort of life and grand plan?
Yeah, so I've just going to do a couple of promos this year and get all my clients lined up for the next 12 to 18 months. So I'll get my next alumni group through. So I'm just happy to keep on doing what I'm doing. I don't really need much more. I'm very satisfied with my model. I'm very satisfied with my freedom and my lifestyle that I've created. And I like hand picking the projects that I like. So I'm on the search for good projects all the time and great people to work with. Life's too short to work with shitty people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, can I ask, do you work, obviously, because you're based in Australia, and is everything that you do, can it be done remotely? For example, if there was somebody in the UK wanting to go for your services, would that be okay, or do we need to come to Australia?
Globally. So I've got people in New York and Sweden and Germany and London. It's been fantastic. Zoom and COVID was the best thing ever. And so, yeah, I love
Yeah,
working
yeah.
through the world. Zoom just made that really possible. So happy to do that. But yeah, just start with the website, get on a free discovery session, take the gift that I'm offering to have a little bit of a look-see, a little bit of an unpack. And even if people are not quite ready yet or can't afford it now, they can put it in their goals and, get themselves sorted, and they know that there's a solution there for them. So yeah, I'm happy to talk with people. I love those conversations and changing people's lives right there, right then.
That's amazing. Well, thank you
I
so
know you'll
much
put it in
for
the show notes,
sharing
but
your. Yes, I
becomingtheexpert.com.au,
will.
because we're in Australia.com.
Becomingtheexpert.com. Yeah, yeah, perfect. I will pop it in the show notes for everybody that's listening. So thank you so much for your time today, Katrena. I've really enjoyed learning about your journey, learning about what you offer, and just touching on sort of the mum side of things as well. So just to sort of recap, obviously we're probably all sitting on a certain level of expertise. And from what you've explained that you do, you're able to sort of monetize those expertise, starting from writing a book and then using that to guide your personal brand. And I think you'd be absolutely silly not to obviously pick up pick up your laptop and book a call, because you've got nothing to lose. For 15 minutes of your life could change the rest of your life. We're speaking with Katrena. So I wish you all the best, Katrena, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon. And thank you for coming on the podcast, and I'll see you guys on the next one.